Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to Nothing Less Than Extraordinary. I am super excited. It's a Monday evening, and Dr. Deena Stacey, right?
Yep.
Awesome. She's actually in California, right?
San Diego, California.
San Diego, California, the beautiful weather, which we do not have here with 25 centimeter of snow, and it keeps constantly snowing. It's beautiful to look at, but not as amazing. So
Yeah, who wants to
very
live in
glad
it forever?
Thank
Well,
you for
we
tuning.
actually had pouring rain today too, so it's not the ideal weather 100% of the time, but it sure gets close.
Thank you. You know what? I am so excited to have you here. She is actually one of my teachers and coach as well in the high conflict resolution. And I really learned a lot in her course. And I'm so grateful that she agreed to take some of her precious time to share the knowledge and the experience that she has accumulated over many, many, many years in terms of training and actually living it through in her own personal life to be able to bring this to the forefront for all of us to benefit. So thank you for being here with me.
Yeah, pleasure. Mine.
So I'm going to introduce Dr. Deena Stacey just really quickly. So today's topic is what to do in high conflict custody case. So unfortunately, a lot of divorce is present right now. So chances are a lot of people find themselves in this. So we want to bring this topic that is really, really essential and kind of break it down a little bit the best that we can and share some wisdom in the process. So let me do a really quick intro of Dr. Deena, and then Dr. Deena, you can also add in anything that I might have left out because I know your credential is pretty extensive, so I don't want to forget anything. So she has a PhD in psychology, and it's a focus on strategy to helping high conflict family resolve the conflict over child custody dispute. She has a master in counseling. I'm just going to technology that pops up. So she has a master in counseling and in leadership, teaching credential from pre-K to adulthood. She also has a Bachelor of Science degree in child development as well as family life education with a specialization in child development. She coaches adult and children to become self-confident, health, reach their full potential, and be happier in life. So that's a little gist of what she does, but she has so much more gift, and it has been beneficial for my life. So I am grateful for that.
Great.
All right, so let's dive into the topic. I wanted to be able to maybe give a little gist, Dr. Deena, of how you kind of got involved and progressed it into this field, this line of work with all of your different expertise.
Well, I went through a high conflict divorce that I had twins and I had my son. They were 16 months apart, and they were about 4 and 5 when I finally decided that the marriage wasn't working for me. And so I tried to end it, but I didn't know how to do it because I didn't understand who I was married to. And so I ended the relationship. It was very dramatic. It was very high conflict, and that lasted for about 14 years. So each of the times, the good news was I found a mentor. My mentor's name is Fred Steeman. He was my mentor for 21 years, and he specialized in anxiety, stress reduction, high conflict. Was something that we started doing together. He used to run a radio station, a whole huge radio station, TV station, everything in San Diego. So he would interview all these people who were coming up through the ranks in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And then he decided he was sick of being in the media, the news media. And so he ended up doing this. He advertised in the newspaper and he advertised in the Reader, which I don't know if you guys have up there, but it was very popular. And then my husband at the time was very stressed out when he found an ad with Fred, he was doing the ad, but above it was a picture of this kind of Zulu doctor with a bone in his nose and his hair wild and stuff. And so he went to his mom and he folded the ad over and he said, "This is who Deena's working with." And that freaked out the whole family even more. My family lived 100 miles away. No one had ever experienced anything like this. I kept getting told, "Well, why can't you work together?" And so little by little, Fred and I feel like I was a pioneer out in the prairie,
Mm,
working on learning the tools and getting to the West Coast. And
mhm,
so it was really hard. A lot of those times I was learning something new. We applied anxiety as his focus. And he said, "You understand people who are going through conflict have a lot of anxiety." I'm
mhm,
like, "Oh," and then he specialized in helping people calm down. So then we applied more techniques. And then unfortunately, he passed away about 20 years ago.
mm,
And the good news was because I'd worked with him so long, I was able to take over what he was teaching and then still learn from that. Then I learned to apply, it's not just anxiety, after doing a lot of reading, a lot of experience, a lot of reading in all sorts of categories and in the
mhm,
psych field and how to deal with a variety of different things, working with kids, all that stuff. I put together this concept, two concepts that are probably primarily the keys to solving the conflict. Number one is understanding the trust line, which is
mhm,
really that there's a high conflict person in every high conflict custody couple, but one of the parents is totally focused on trying to figure out how to get them to work with him. The other one doesn't know how to, who doesn't have the brain development to do that
mhm,
or the consciousness. And so that's the first part. And then the second part is what I call stringing pearls, getting into the kid's imagination and pulling them out of the middle. So all the pieces that go around there is helping parents, number one, stop trying to get the other parent to work with them. So here we are telling people in the court system, you need to learn to work together. You need
mhm,
to learn to, go have picnics together and wash each other's laundry and write thank you notes. That all that advice was given to me and or someone else that I worked with, and it was not even reasonable. And then
mhm,
later on, when I started researching, I had a lot of different things that I did. And it finally dawned on me, along with one of the guys named Bill Eddy, who has written quite a bit of high conflict stuff. He started promoting that there's a high conflict person in the mix. I read his stuff. I read a whole bunch of other stuff that had been published on high conflict. I read, and because of my own experience, my background in child development, I was like, look, there are two things people need. One, they have to learn to calm down,
mhm,
cannot continue to keep trying to work together. They have to learn to let go. And
mhm,
number two, they have to be able to focus on being a brilliant parent because their kids otherwise are always in the middle.
mhm,
And we know that when you're distracted, lights on, no one's home for your children. So it takes, here's another great piece. It takes 3 days to calm down after every single interaction, voice or verbal interaction excuse me, visual or verbal. So a visual interaction could be a letter, a text, an email, a family wizard, or one of the different programs that are available for people to log their permanent, email communication in. Um,
mhm,
Talking Parents is the other one we use, and or a letter from an attorney, a bill from an attorney, a phone call, we need more money. I just had this particular person, she just emailed and said, my new attorney has just asked me for $65,000 for court. Well, $65,000 shouldn't even be spent on this kind of stuff,
mhm,
but it's litigious. And some people get off on high conflict. It's part of their DNA. And other people, it makes them go crazy with anxiety and fear, and then they don't present very well. So then the second piece is, like I said, really, really focusing on how to end your conflict by changing and letting go of that other parent. And the good news is it only takes one parent to end the conflict. That's the good news. So
that
I know
is
I
the
went on
key.
and on, but hopefully that kind of piece helps understand where I came from. Each time I would learn new things, I'd apply it, it worked. And I've been working with parents since 1997.
Mhm,
This is my 26th year. I've been teaching
Congrats.
parenting classes.
Mhm,
I actually have been teaching parenting classes since the 80s, but in
mhm,
1997, we officially launched the class, my mentor and I together. And he taught for quite a few years until he passed away, and then I took over the whole thing. So
mhm.
anyway, hopefully that answers enough of your information now. You can ask me more questions.
I didn't want to interrupt because it was so good and it was so important. So it's better to allow the flow to go. And I want to be able to summarize a little bit as well as reiterate for people so that it actually sinks in as well. So when people are actually going through this high conflict resolution, you mentioned the trust line. There's one of the parents that does not have the consciousness or the awareness in terms
Right.
of how to work together as a team in order to get out of the high conflicts resolution. Am I correct with that?
Yeah, yeah, they're not able to resolve it because usually there's two different kinds of people. And
Mm-hmm.
the trust line is something that I call it based on research, based on my experience. So both of those things. Basically, the research says that when a baby is born, if they have a family that's trusting and loving and consistent and caring, the baby gets their needs met. So they get their diapers changed, they get napped and they get slept, they get all the loving and the nurturing and the food and all the things that they need.
Mm-hmm.
And so somewhere between 12 and 24 months, that baby is developing the neural connectors in the brain for trust.
Mm-hmm.
They're developing insight, they're developing the fact that things are consistent, they can trust that everything will be okay. And so that is really critical for developing the ability to have insight, to have empathy, to
Mm-hmm.
have compassion, to have understanding, and for them to predict consequences. And
Mm-hmm.
so when those things are in place, 12 to 24 months, by the time a child is 4, they
Mm-hmm.
will have the neural connectors to start understanding and developing a conscience. The conscience is continued to be developed over time. But if the baby doesn't get those consistent markers in the brain, and the neuroconnectors are basically all the little squiggly lines when you see a brain, from a picture, but it's really like superhighways or
Mm-hmm.
branches of a tree, whatever you want to think about. And what happens is those keep getting strengthened. So some branches are a lot fatter and they nurture, and then little branches come up. And that's the way the brain is. And so those branches, you want them to be empathy and understanding and compassion. Well, so by the time a child is 4 years old, they've either developed a conscience or they haven't, based on being trustworthy. Now, the opposite person who's
Mm-hmm.
raised differently, they're raised in an environment where they were born into chaos, conflict, and craziness. And what
Mm-hmm.
I mean by that, their family structure is inconsistent. It's unstable. For whatever reason, there's chaos or there's conflict or there's somebody who has some issues. Maybe they have a disability, maybe there's no money, maybe there's some kind of substance abuse, maybe there's some psychological issues, maybe there's a language barrier, maybe a person's overwhelmed and they can't do it all. So that child does not get consistency. Diapers aren't changed constantly on time like they would be. They aren't loved. Maybe they're even treated roughly.
Mm-hmm.
And so that child doesn't develop the neural connectors for empathy. They develop neural connectors that say no one should be trusted. No one is going to take care of you. Watch out, stranger danger. Don't trust anyone, including your family. Do whatever it takes to survive. So I call that being raised by the wolves,
Mm-hmm.
because those children are not getting, honey, you can't pull the kitty's tail like that. It'll scratch you. They're getting, go ahead, hurt it,
Yeah.
right? Or do whatever you have to. And it's not like people understand that. But when you talk to somebody who's been raised in a childhood, and or maybe they've been raised above the trust line and they're in a relationship and had kids with someone, you're like, oh my gosh, this person never gets along. They're in and out of a relationship with a parent or a sibling or
Mm-hmm.
a family member of some kind, and they scrambled and they talk about, look at me, I'm a self-made person. And you're like, yeah, but you don't have a clue how to be people oriented. You
Mm-hmm.
don't have any ability. And so that's where we hear all this stuff about narcissism and
Mm-hmm.
people who have these kind of high conflict personalities. And now what happens is this person has learned to manipulate, and they've learned to find the naive people who will
Yeah.
happen to be of the trust line. Then they have children with them. And then it's a wonder that people are like, well, why can't you learn to work with to get with them? Well, one, because the other person is totally focused on getting what they want. So they know how to tell you what you need. They
Mm-hmm.
know how to promise you something, but they don't remember because the consequence piece isn't attached. So if someone does something and they go, oh, I didn't do that. You did too. I caught you doing, well, I don't remember doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Or, well, I had to do that. And so the story is always changing. Unfortunately, high conflict people are highly motivated to win. So we have a little quote my husband and I use because we do workshops and we help people and answer questions. Love is like a butterfly. If you love something, let it go. And if it doesn't come back, hunt it down and kill it. Right. And that is really why some people can get divorced and they may not like each other anymore, but they are totally focused on the love of their children. And they're
Mm-hmm.
totally focused and they have the same mindset. In this case, co-parenting does not work because parents cannot see eye to eye. They have a whole different way they look at co-parenting. And I can explain that to you unless you have other questions about the trust line.
No, because it segued exactly into what I wanted to do, because that's one of the thing when you're found yourself into high conflict resolution is that a lot of time professional with the best intention in the world and doing what they do, they have all these good intention, but yet they're constantly pushing you to be doing this co-parenting. And it's not a judgment at all. Like, you got to understand that they're coming from a place of good intent, but you got to know that whether it's going to work for you or not, which is was in my case here. And then luckily for me, it came around to co-parenting doesn't really work,
Right.
keeping us in two separate rooms. Because I noticed when we are actually both present, it creates a lot of anxiety for me, and it create even more chaotic and more conflict in that situation. So I am glad you touch on that. So like when you're in this high conflict situation in a relationship like this, because you kind of one need to know you're above the high trust line, which really makes sense in my case. And then on the other partner, I don't know like what the percentage is in term of it, but usually when you find yourself in this type of situation, you have one who has below the trust line and who's constantly is used to chaos and drama and seeks those moments. So you're always in conflict with them no matter what you do. So please elaborate on that, because it's important.
Okay.
Because the biggest struggle that I have was going into this relationship and going and hoping that they would come around and change, but I don't think they will. And that's what
Yeah.
you taught me to accept it, learning to
Right.
let go.
Well, there are three pieces that you brought up. The first
Mm-hmm.
one is that as a parent who's raised above the trust line, and most people who are listening to this podcast will be those people,
Yeah.
because people who are in high conflict, they don't need self-improvement because they're already perfect, right? They don't have insight. So why would they get any value out of my class? They're in there, they get their certificate, they're out of there because they had to do it, versus somebody who keeps coming going, oh my gosh, I need this.
Mm-hmm.
So the one thing you got to understand when you're above the trust line is you're naive.
Yeah.
You don't know that there's a dark side. And so you're still trying to make it work, because part of that personality of trust
Yeah.
is believing in the other person, loyalty,
Mm-hmm.
assuming they can change. And so it's really hard. And that was a really hard piece for me to finally grasp. They're not going to change. They can't change. The DNA is already started. So that's the first piece, which is why I say it only takes one parent. Because once you stop trying
Mm-hmm.
and focus on what you do have control over, and that is your children.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's so much easier to become a brilliant parent. Not ideally in the very beginning, and you still have to deal with the difficult person taking you to court and writing ugly things about you and poisoning the children. I
Mm-hmm.
got a call yesterday from a gal, and she just said, my son is playing these video games. And she said, then a friend calls and said, is your son over at your house right now? No. Well, good, because they're cursing and yelling and playing this game with their father right now, and I won't let my son play on that online with him anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so she asked me, how do I deal with that? So the kind of things that you have to deal with are the highest level of dealing with stuff. So you have to step up to a higher level. And
Yeah.
if you're totally focused on getting them to work with you, you're wasting your life energy.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's the first piece. Number two, or actually first and second piece, takes one parent. The next part about it is the definition of co-parenting and why it doesn't work. I already explained trust line. This is a very short version. My video, if anybody wants to watch it, they can reach out to me. I will send them a copy of it. There's a video called The Trust Line that I explain it, but it's about 45 minutes. So it's a lot more detail. Is the definition of cooperative co-parenting versus conflictual co-parenting. Cooperative co-parenting is what the courts all think you can do. And that is both parents believe the other parent has the best interests of the children at heart. Both parents believe the other parent is important in the children's life. Both parents believe that they can work together. They're both willing and able to put their differences aside to reach an agreement for their children. Both parents will do whatever it takes to support that agreement, and both parents will do whatever it takes to help each parent have a relationship with their children. Now, whenever I ask people that question in my class, about 100% of them raise their hand and go, no, we don't have that. So we have to have a conflictual co-parenting definition. Okay, and that is one or both of the parents believes the other parent does not have the best interests of the children at heart. One or both parents believes the other parent is not important in the children's life. One or both of the parents believes the other parent has a parenting personality flaw, character flaw, some kind of detriment to the children, whatever that is. Everybody loves that one, right? One or both parents goes to court to seek help or revenge, depending on which parent goes to court. And one or both of the parents will do whatever it takes to undermine the children's relationship with the other parent. And when you get that combination, you're like, yeah, that's me. Well, then you're not going to be able to co-parent because the other parent has to have insight. And so then people always ask me, well, can they change? And I don't really need to answer that when we all know they can. How much energy did it take me working on that for so long? How many times people raise their hand, they go, yeah, I've been trying for 5 years. I've been trying for 20, whatever it's been. So it's a very depressing moment when you realize it's up to you only. And it's also a very freeing moment where you go, oh, it only takes one parent? Well, it might as well be me.
Yeah.
So then that leads to how to be a gold medal parent. So let me go back to one other piece before we get to that side. And that is that in a conflictual co-parenting relationship, you have to use the language of co-parenting with the court.
Yeah.
But you have to practice parallel parenting or mom's world, dad's world. And we could go on and on about that one. That's another video. If somebody wants to watch it, it's like 4 different videos explaining the rules and how to do it. But basically what it does is it stops you from asking the other parent or getting their permission. You do what you do in your world without the other parent interfering. Because one of the things we have not said yet is that, and I mentioned this, but every time you hear the other parent's voice or see their face in any capacity, it takes 72 hours to calm down. 3 days. Now, if we have an exchange on Friday face-to-face, an exchange on Sundays face-to-face, and then we do another one on Wednesday, we go to co-parenting counseling together, we go to a sporting event together, whatever it is, you're just spinning like you just had a car accident every single day. So you never recover. You just get out of the hospital and then you get hit again.
Yeah.
And then, go back to the hospital, you get out of the hospital, you get hit again. That's what it does to you. So you cannot pay attention for your children. Okay, so that I wanted to mention that. And I do have a high conflict equation. Contact plus communication equals conflict. Increase the amount of communication, increase the amount of contact, you'll have an increased conflict. Decrease contact, decrease communication, you'll have less conflict.
Yeah,
So
and I
the
can
goal
actually
is
speak to that.
control that.
Yeah, and I can actually attest to that too, because once I actually decrease the amount of communication exposure to the person and limiting it just to email, thank God it used to be from a whole bunch of text and never understood why I was always stressed to now just once a week, and I'm able to let go and process and be present with my kids. So yes, very good point.
Yeah. And not only that, but you can only be present with one person at a time. I mean, if you have 3 kids there, you're focusing on one kid and then you're moving to the other one. So you back and forth and you say, oh, I'm with my kids. Yeah. Being with your kids is not entertaining your kids. Okay, throwing your kids into, oh, go watch TV is not being with your kids. Being with your kids is getting into their imagination.
Mhm.
Being with your kids is planning what I call stringing pearls activities with them for the future, tomorrow, an hour from now, 2 weeks from now, depending on their age. Here's why it's magical. Kids don't get time. So I know I was laughing. My granddaughter's birthday was yesterday. We were supposed to have a big party at our house. My ex-husband got COVID, so he couldn't come. And so that threw the whole party into we're going to be doing it in a couple weeks. Well, because of that, I said to my daughter, but it's my birthday. I want to be there. And she goes, okay, here's what we're going to do. So they took a trip to the Pacific Ocean Park Museum, right?
Mhm.
They went there, and then they came back, and I went up there at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, stayed till 8, and hung out with my granddaughter and my grandson for a little while, right?
Mhm.
So I could be with them, and then we sing happy birthday to her. Now, her party is until, February, but the whole point is that I was so disappointed. I'm like, "This is the first time since COVID I'm having them over to my house. Now they're not coming," right? And so, all those little disappointments are kind of related to the loss and the heartache of having your kids be at the other parents and
Mm.
the worry that they're not going to turn out okay. So when I finally, this is my part, when I finally understood, I am so energized with conflict. It's addicting.
Mhm.
Some people are already born into conflict, as I mentioned, but what happens is every time you have this anxiety interaction, whatever it is, you get a piece of mail, you get an email, you get a call, whatever it is, you have a face-to-face exchange, you ramp up. Well, then you're not present for your kids because you're wondering what's the next thing, which is part of the way communication is. It's called the unresolved communication in a relationship.
Mhm.
You didn't finish it. Now we're going to spin what are they going to do next? Are they going to do this or, whatever. So I've had a lot of fun teaching parents how to do things differently so that they can focus on being where they need to be present for their kids. So going back to stringing pearls, kids don't get time. My granddaughter, my daughter says to me, Mom, she won't know it's her birthday. Well, she did. Okay, because she's 6, but she really didn't know.
Mhm.
Right, but it was for me to go up there and be with her because I'd missed out on the year in COVID. I wasn't able to be there I wasn't allowed to be there except for
Mhm.
a week away, right? It was tough. And so it felt like what I went through before in my conflict. It
Mhm.
was like, oh my gosh, I'm reliving that. I thought I was done with it. So those things are they're triggered here. But when I finally understood, it's my job to make sure my kids aren't compromised.
Mhm.
The other parent isn't going to do it. They don't have the capacity. They don't have the patience. They don't have the insight. They don't have the consistency. All of those pieces are part of why everybody gets frustrated. Well, we have to help them step up. We have to help them get better. You can work all you want to on that. But meantime, where are the kids growing up without you? Who's raising the children?
Mhm.
And you want to guarantee your kids have the best. So you have to be a higher level. I call it gold medal parenting or
Mhm.
parenting to the 100th power, right? And
Yeah.
what does that look like? It's not just I'm going to just get by. It's really looking at what do my kids need to learn they're missing out on? And how do I build a world if my children are cursing at the other parents? And
Mhm.
how do I help my children with rewarding them for not cursing in my home? And we focus on what is appropriate. We help them find people to love. We give them rewards for being kind, helping somebody, let's say across the street. I don't really mean that, but what was the funniest thing you saw today at school? What was the nicest thing somebody did?
Mhm.
What did you do? So you're focusing on helping them get rewarded. You can even set up a system. They don't want to brush their teeth at the other parent's home. You say, we have a system. Scout's honor. But if you tell me you brushed your teeth over at dad's or mom's house, you get a point. Those points add up. We get to go do something special. Now,
Mhm.
back to the actual stringing of pearls. It's all about the way the brain works. If you have nothing to look forward to, you will always go into negative anticipation. COVID did a number on people because there was nothing to look forward to, right? High conflict does a number on people because all they can think about is, oh my God, here we go to court again. Here we go. Here we go. It's one more thing, one more email. So you have to get yourself out of that and focus on one, what are you going to do for you that's fun?
Mm-hmm.
Because when you go find something fun, you bring back joy, wonder, curiosity, adventure, which you share with your children, not your anger, your fear, your distraction, and whatever else it is. So when kids go to bed at night, if they have something to look forward to, they're going to do with you. Because kids don't get time, it feels like tomorrow or an hour from now is forever away, which
Mm-hmm.
means they will feel close to you today until forever comes, and then there'll be another event. So it's magical. Kids go to bed with breathless anticipation, excited because they're going to do this tomorrow with you. And the craziest part about it is we're going to cook in the kitchen breakfast. It's not Disneyland.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to cost money. You're making breakfast anyway. I'll
Mm-hmm.
give you a story, one of my favorite fast, quick stories. Father comes in, mom's he's complaining that mom is programming his son to be afraid of him. And so I'm talking about stringing pearls and going through the specifics. He comes back the next week and he says, oh my gosh, his face has completely changed. He says, this is what happened. I said to my 8-year-old son, you get to help plan breakfast on Saturday. What do you want? And dad's a little nervous because he doesn't really cook. And he goes, Dad, can we have hard boiled eggs? And he goes, oh, good. That's what I always make every Saturday. Right. And then he goes, Dad, can we have some other stuff with it? So he's so excited he can hardly stand it. So this is on Tuesday. On Thursday, he's at mom's house. He calls Dad, can we have some other stuff to go with it too? And he goes, yeah, like what? And he goes, can we also have toast, sourdough toast and bacon? Dad goes, that's exactly what I have on Saturday. So on Friday, he picks his son up and they go buy the ingredients. Now, so the child is thinking about Saturday on Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday at mom's house. And Friday, they go get the stuff. Saturday morning at the crack of dawn, the boy's like, Mom, Dad, get up, we're making breakfast.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it's the same breakfast he was always making, but it's his idea.
Yeah.
Now, you can get kids to clean up. You can get kids to help in the kitchen when it's part of their idea.
Mm-hmm.
So how you apply this is that you're always looking for ways to have them be a part of it. You give them a voice and a vote. The older they get, the more they plan. You can have them go find out what to do, make phone calls, make a report. You have a family meeting, a family budget, a family vacation. There's lots of things you do around that idea, and it's always growing. Well, then you're teaching your children responsibility,
Mm-hmm.
resilience, respect, self-confidence. You're teaching them caring, whether it's doing something for the homeless or having a pet. All of that stuff overrides what goes on at the other parent. Now,
Mm-hmm.
you probably still need to have some counseling in place and some other pieces like that. And it'd be nice if you had a really strong court order. And every high conflict case is different, but some of them fit into certain categories. Number one, somebody who walks out and then they come back in and wreak havoc every mom or dad. Two, somebody who's mean and revengeful and they want to poison the kids against the other parent. Three, somebody who really is just an inadequate parent and they don't want to admit it. And so the other parent has to overcompensate. And then for any other thing in between where a stepmom is super involved and shouldn't be, usually it's women that are more involved in making high conflict cases grow. Not always, but for the most part it is. And then any other variation of something where, like I have one where a father was a stay-at-home dad, mom got sick of it, kicked him out, got custody of
Mm-hmm.
the kids, and then it had to take litigation for him to get his time back. But he was devastated, but he was already struggling with low self-esteem. He wasn't working full time. There was a lot of pieces, and that's the same with women, where they just get shocked and surprised when the guy boots him out of the house, sends him down the road, sends him to jail, something happens, and now they may never recover. So the goal is to understand you can fix this, but it takes hard work. You have to work on you, and you have to work on being a parent to the 100th power.
But
So
if you follow the suggestion that Dr. Deena mentioned, it's really going to help you. And I want to also, because the stringing of the pearl, it really is simplistic. You just got to find the ingredient that work for your family. Like some of the stuff that she named, those are a few ideas, and it can be so simple as so long as it's an idea that's coming from your children and giving them a voice. And doesn't mean that they're permitted to do everything, but you can choose and limit within those choice of things that you want it to be the choice that you want them to pick, to list them out, and they have to make a decision. I also want to mention to people too is that you hold the power to this, and at the same time be gentle with yourself while you're going through the process. As you mentioned, it took you like 14 years to go through the process to figure it out. I'm trying to figure out mine, but with the strategy that Dr. Deena shared, has been very, very helpful for me to stay focused.
good.
The other thing that I realized as well that you might want to mention is with regards to like the triangulation, like you mentioned about women being in conflict. When you get into a new partner, this is where the conflict, the dynamic kind of comes into play. If you want to expand on
Yeah.
that a bit.
Well, I call it the high conflict triangle because
Mm.
basically the whole relationship is based on conflict between the mom and the dad, or two moms, or whatever the relationship is. And so now one of them gets into a new relationship, but based on conflict, the third person that's involved, generally a stepmom or a girlfriend or whatever they are, and their new relationship is based on conflict. So they need to continue their conflict with the mom or the dad in order to keep their relationship going. And so when they're trying to keep their relationship going, it's best if the mom or the dad, who's the other partner, is still having conflict with them, because that keeps the relationship going. I had this client once and I'm like, let me explain the high conflict triangle to you. She had an ex-husband, he'd remarried, and then she stopped having conflict. It took a while, but she stopped having conflict. And she said, "Oh my gosh, Deena, you're psychic." And I'm like, "Why?" She says, "Because you told me that their marriage was gonna fall apart
Mm-hmm.
once I got rid of the conflict." She said, "It did. And now he's looking for another woman to have conflict with." So
Exactly.
yeah, so that's important too,
Mm-hmm.
is
And
to
I also,
understand.
yeah. The other thing too that I've learned in your class is that I was forever like the parent that took the high road all the time, but I've learned
Ugh,
over the time that there's a way to explain a perception to the children. If the other parent is giving like a bad perception or bringing you down on story that are not true and using manipulation, I used to not defend for myself. I thought I was taking the high road and my children would figure it out and would see it, but it's actually very, very detrimental to the children because they have only one perception, and that's the one perception either from the dad or
yep,
the mother, and you don't take the time to give them a different version so that they can compare. So all they got is that maybe it's true what
yep,
mom and dad was telling me. So I learned over time to voice my opinion, the story, without judging or talking bad about the other partner, so that they have a more complete version and make their own decision and kind of help them through that process. It's so
yeah,
crucial.
yeah. So you really need to understand that if you don't step up and help your children sort through what the other parent is saying about you or your significant other or your family or your job or whatever else it is, then if you don't do that, then they do believe it. And a couple things. Number one, if anybody who feels like their kids are being poisoned, you should start with reading the Divorce Poison book. It's called Divorce Poison by Richard Warshak, Warshak. It's the best book I've found. It's not perfect, but it's a start. Number two, you should look at the video called The 8 Steps of Empathy that I designed. And then there's a second video that follows on how to deal with certain questions or circumstances. All right, so that's the next thing.
Yeah. And another book that after I read your book, it's really good for that one. Another book that I read also, not that it's the case for a lot of women that are in it, as well as for the men too. is that usually when you're in this high conflict situation, there's also a component of abuse in there too. Definitely, like, and there's so many cases more and more that one partner is married to a narcissist, that is coming out more and more. One book that I read that was really good is called Why Does He Do That? Why Does He Do That? By Lundy Bancroft. Definitely check that out too.
Yeah,
It's really good.
Bancroft, yeah. He the first time I read him, I bawled.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, this guy's so right on. He worked in the domestic violence clinic, and the stories in there where he confronted people, you're like, oh, they don't have a clue, do they? So that's a really good book. And also, I have classes on Zoom. So if anybody's interested, they can always reach out and ask when they are.
Absolutely. And that's where we're getting there, because I can dive into this topic. We're probably going to have a part two, Dr. Deena, if you're good with that. But because there's so much material to dive in, this is where I actually have the platform to highlight you and all of the workshop that you have, because I attended your workshop. And you could be in Canada, based anywhere around the world, and still be able to take the courses. And they're so good. And I was doing it. It was like finishing
9
at
o'clock.
midnight. Yeah, that's it. It's like starting at like 10
Yeah.
at night, finishing at midnight, midnight and a half. But when it's important, I want to be able to use that tool. So if I'm able to do that, you can definitely do it, because it's definitely worth it for the investment and the money for yourself, your own peace of mind, and also for your children. So Dr. Deena, what do you have courses, things that you're coming up? You also have your website that you're launching courses online that people can take as well. So please talk
Yeah,
to us.
well, yeah, I do have online classes right now at
Mhm.
parentsinconflict.com. However, my goal is, I thought I was going to get done in the end of January, but some other things have interfered with that. Like my husband's decided to move offices, and suddenly that has there's a lot of stuff we've accumulated in 20 years of being in the same office. And so we're moving to another office. And so I'm digitizing about half my home and the office. So it's taking a
Mhm.
little longer than I thought. But the one that's coming is co-parenting secrets
Mhm.
com, and that one is a brand new is all the new stuff. The old one I did 52 hours of content, and then my IT guy made me divide it up. So I will say in another lesson we'll be talking about this, and we never do. So I pulled the most basic stuff out. It's around a 12-hour class. I still have to record the last part on stringing pearls, and then there'll be some bonuses. For example, some of the recordings from the best classes I've had.
Mhm.
So Tuesday nights, I have a live Zoom class from
Mhm.
6:45 to 9 p.m. Pacific Coast time. All
Mhm.
right, classes right now, $40 a class. If
Mhm.
people need a certificate, they usually come 6 times, so they'll get a certificate after that. I also have my online classes. I do work with people individually. I do have an hourly rate. I don't need to mention it here, but if somebody needs some individual stuff, they do. And I work with children involved in the middle. They have to be kids that I can help where there wouldn't be a litigation over using my services. Because
Mhm.
I'm an educator, I don't have a license for therapy. I
Mhm.
chose not to do that. I took all the classes, but decided, why am I doing that when I know exactly what I'm good at? And
Mhm.
so I didn't ever do the hours, even though I've done hundreds of hours working with people. I decided not to do that. So I'm not a licensed clinical or a marriage family therapist. I am an educator with thousands of experience hours with hundreds and hundreds of people I've worked with and helped. And some I haven't, because they
Mhm.
didn't want it. They just knew they had to come get a certificate. So
And it's not, so the credential is there, and also she has a lot of experience personally as well, having gone through it. So there is nothing like a personal experience to be able to guide you through the step by step and how to avoid the pitfall. Um, I want to be able to leave you on this last note as well. I want you to share your, I don't know what you want to share. Is it your email address or your phone number, how people can actually reach you?
okay, they can email me at DOC at DEENA, S as in Sam, T as in Tom, AC as in cat, ER.com. So doc at DeenaStacey.com. They can call my Google number, 858-522-9396. It
Perfect.
goes to me. So
Excellent.
thank you.
So I'm going to leave you on the last note is a quote. I love quotes. So I don't know if you have a quote that has served you in your personal life and that can continue to inspire you, but to also inspire other people on this to remember.
Okay, so this is my quote. It's a long, long story, another time to talk about how it came about. But it is, you can be bitter or better in life. Choose better and go after every day, no matter how it goes your way. Right. And
I
that's actually me who lives that way, looking for when you have bitter, you got to figure out how to get better.
I love it. It's a good one to remember. Thank you so much, Dr. Deena.
My
I hope
pleasure. Thank
everybody
you,
is.
honey.
Thank you so much. I
All right.
appreciate it. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Dr. Deena. It was so good. So much powerful stuff there. Just one gist. I just let you talk because it's so good. I didn't want to interrupt at all. So this is perfect. But if you're interested, we can do a part 2 at another time later on, whenever
Sure.
you're available. So when I'm ready to post this, because I have pre-interview a podcast guest 7 weeks ahead of time. So when it's ready to come out, I will actually share it with you a couple of days before, 3-4 days before. I say, Dr. Deena, I'm about to promote this. I'm going to share it with you, and you can do whatever you want with that material.
Yeah, well, hopefully I'll get my website done by that time, and then we can delete that one little spot that says, but I'm going to just forward the parents in conflict
Yeah.
to the new one, so it really doesn't matter.
Mhm.
Like I said, it's so clunky. I hate that site, but it's a lot of content, and people in Hong Kong take it all the time.
Exactly. And if you have any free stuff that they can download, or I always give a gift to my audience. If you have anything like that that really gets them into it, and then they'll dive in, they'll get to know you a little bit more, it's always a good
Yeah,
tactic as
I
well.
have articles. It's funny because the other day, as I said, I was scanning through all this stuff. I'm like, I have written stringing pearls with 5 different versions in the last couple years.
Mhm.
Now I got to figure out how to make it a booklet.
Okay.
So
Good
yeah,
one.
there's so much stuff, whether I do it in Canva or whether I just hire somebody to go here's the Word docs, make it
And
work.
just, I think that would probably be
Mm.
the best way to go about it.
Yeah. And then of course those videos are free too. People can email me for those.
That's
So
fantastic. Thank you
yeah,
so much for today. I
you're
miss you,
welcome.
and I can't wait
You're
to
always welcome to
see.
come in
For
anytime at 10
sure,
o'clock.
absolutely. I'm keeping that in mind, and I'm going to be sharing with a lot of people that I know too. So even if it's in the US, if it works for them and they're willing to do it, yeah, I would
All
highly
right.
suggest it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, honey. Take
Have
care.
you
All right.
too. Bye.
Bye-bye.